Hola, y'all. Nature Girl 30 here, and as you can see, I am pretty tired because I did not have a chance to actually watch the whole thing live. I was able to actually see two matches before it ended, and then I had to go back and watch the rest. I actually did see the match between King Bear and Neville, and I also did have to go back and I also saw the main event, and I had to go back and see the kickoff. But let's get started with the kickoff. The kickoff, of course, was a joke. It really was. Damien Sandow or I don't know, Macho Mandow and Curtis Axel pretending he's Hulk Hogan getting beat by the Ascension. I'm sorry, it was a joke. The Ascension deserved to have a better match than that. This is pretty much their first pay-per-view win ever. Pretty much their first win ever. They've been squashed since they came in, and I really felt that they deserved to have a better match than that. But besides all that, we end up having a second match. Well, we ended up having a match before that official match that was on the cards, which was strange. I don't know why they had two matches on the kickoff, but we end up having R-Truth. Uh, we end up having R-Truth in a match, and I can't even remember who he was actually fighting against because in the end, I think he ended up winning. Oh yeah, Stardust. He actually did fight Stardust. The one thing that makes me sad is I like Stardust's gimmick. I really do. This is the best gimmick that Cody Rhodes has ever had that worked. And if he ends it after this, I don't know. I don't know what else he's gonna do. I mean, he was Cody Rhodes. Nothing happened. Well, he was a heel for a while. He's been in some great feuds. He's had some, but he's never really had any decent wins. The only decent win he's had when he was an IC champion, and that was the best win he ever had because he actually did bring back the original IC championship belt and he brought some class back to it. But I would say that that's literally the most legit he was when he was a heel. So I'm hoping he stays heel. But if he comes back as Cody Rhodes, more than likely he's going to be a face. But either or, it was a match that I wanted Stardust to win, but I would have to say that that was more of a legit kickoff match than a match with Damien Sandow and Curtis Axel and the Ascension. That match was a joke. But the match before that with R-Truth and Stardust was the main match, in my opinion. But either or, that match was good, but the kickoff went on way too long. It should have just been one match instead of two. But that's my only gripe. But moving on to the actual pay per view itself, with all the matches on the card originally, I will say this: that pay per view, Payback, was a lot more aggressive and a lot more faster paced than Extreme Rules, which is something to be unexpected, I guess. It was something I really didn't expect. I actually thought that Payback was going to be the slower pay per view. It was going to be the pay per view that was going to be somewhat of, well, boring. But honestly, it really wasn't at all. It was very, very aggressive. Every match that happened on that pay per view was very aggressive. Like, for example, Rusev versus John Cena. That match itself was the last, so they had to do something with it. That match was extremely aggressive. But there's only one problem that I had with it, and this also happened with the New Day and the New Day versus Tyson Kidd and Cesaro, which was two great matches. That was a great tag team match, and that was also a great I Quit match. But I will say this: those two matches ended on somewhat of a technicality. Number one, for the New Day's match, you end up having Xavier Woods pretending to be one of the guys. Well, let's be real. No one can really imagine themselves being Big E. More than likely, the referee got him confused with Kofi Kingston. I don't know how, but I guess no, I'm not gonna go there. I was gonna say, well, maybe these all black people look alike, but I'm just joking, and that was a bad joke, so just ignore that. But anyway, maybe it was just the fact. I don't know. I'm not going to that either. But I will say that somehow Xavier was pretty much the most useless of the three. Ended up getting a roll up pin to keep the belt for the New Day. And then we end up having the I Quit match. Rusev saying something in Russian, and Lana had to translate. We have no idea what he said. Unless you actually speak Russian, maybe you know what he said. I don't know. But yeah, you end up having Lana to come up there and say, he says I quit. And I'm like, okay. Well, we know that Lana got the boot, so I don't know where it's going to go from there. More than likely, Lana's going to be free to do whatever she wants. And at least we'll be able to hear her music more often. But either or, I really wish the matches didn't end that way. But it did. But I will say throughout the whole match, it was pretty aggressive and it was pretty nice to see. But then moving on to the Divas match, the one match that I kept skipping because I kept falling asleep. But after seeing that match, we ended up getting a decent win from Tamina and Naomi. Naomi needed the win more than the Bellas did. I'm sorry, she did by far. She's a new, freshly revamped heel, and she really needed the win. She hasn't really had a decent win in a while, and her and Tamina was great. I don't know where it's going to go from there, but either or, it was really nice to see those two win. And I'm kind of happy that the heels won over the faces. Where it's going to go for the championship match, I don't know. We're going to have to see. I really don't think that Naomi's going to be champ anytime soon, but I don't mind being wrong. But then let's move on to King Barrett versus Neville. Honestly, that match, like I said in my predictions, that King Barrett literally gave Neville a run for his money. That was a pretty hard-hitting, aggressive match, and for a newcomer, he held his own. Of course, Neville kind of came out on top over King Barrett, which kind of makes King Barrett look bad after winning the King of the Ring, but you got to expect that. Where is any other individual besides Stone Cold Steve Austin looked bad after winning the King of the Ring? That just happens. That happens with the territory. But either or, neither one, in my opinion, was squashed because they both put on a really great match. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed seeing it. And it didn't really have a crummy finish, in my opinion. There have been a lot of crummy finishes on this pay-per-view. And that's something I'll go into later after I review all the matches. But then we also got Bray Wyatt versus Ryback, a match I didn't expect to be fast-paced, but it was fast-paced and aggressive. And honestly, I'm happy that Ryback lost. Because Bray needed the win. He really needed the win. He don't have a lot of pay-per-view wins under his belt. And every time he talks about being a new face of fear, he loses against a really big guy. So he really does need to have this momentum going on, especially the fact that he's calling himself the new face of fear. Because him losing to the Undertaker, that didn't really do anything good for him. So he really did need this win. I'm hoping that they keep the momentum up. I'm really hoping that he actually wins the next pay-per-view, if he actually is in another pay-per-view. But let's move on to the main event. The main event was the main event. Like, this is the first time that I will say that for a pay-per-view, you always have another match that trumps the main event. This main event trumped the entire pay-per-view, by far. It was amazing. And everybody was like, oh, Shield's going to reunite. No, they weren't. I kind of knew that from the get-go. But it was nice to have a Shield triple threat. It was nice to have a Shield triple threat. I never thought a Shield triple threat would be that great, but it was. Seeing how they took out Orton, amazing. That was absolutely awesome. But in the end, yeah, Seth Rollins retains with Kane helping out. And Kane saying, I don't need this job. I can have you lose and walk out. I would actually prefer Kane to lose and walk out with all that talk than helping out Seth Rollins and having Seth Rollins keep the belt, because it makes everything he says look cheap. It makes the whole feud that he was in look cheap, and it made it no sense at all. If you say you don't need the job and you say that, okay, it would be satisfying to actually see you lose, then Kane could have just left. It would have been a great moment for me if Seth Rollins actually did lose the belt. I would have been fine with that, and Kane did not interfere. Well, more than likely, Kane would probably have to do something. But in the very end, when everything was on the line, towards the end of the match, I would have been happy if Kane actually allowed Seth Rollins to lose. Because it makes everything that Kane said to Seth Rollins look like it meant nothing. And it kind of makes Kane look bad. That's just my opinion of it. I would have been fine if Kane actually did decide to walk out and be done with it. Wash his hands of it, go home, be finished. When he say, I don't need the job, yeah, be like, I don't need the job. Because he didn't. And honestly, Seth Rollins is not what's best for business. I would have been fine with Dean Ambrose. And I would have been fine with, I guess I would have been okay with Randy Orton. But not so much Roman Reigns. I would have been fine with those two winning and Kane losing his job, because Kane really felt, and he had like, it didn't seem like it bothered him at all when he actually made that behind the scenes talk. It didn't bother him at all. So I would have been fine if he actually put his money where his mouth was or is and left. But that didn't happen. He actually did retain. But let's go, now that I talked about all the matches, let's talk about the one thing that really bothered me. Besides the technicalities that was with the other two matches, let's talk about the finishes. The finishes were bad. I'm sorry, they really were. You had, and I guess, like I said on Twitter, that's what you get for taking away the curb stomp. Yeah, he don't have a finisher, y'all. He still doesn't have a well-polished finisher to take place of the curb stomp, because it was way too early to have the curb stomp taken away. If he had another finisher behind his belt, then fine. It would have been straight. But he doesn't have a legit finisher. So what did he do? He did the freaking pedigree. The pedigree's already been done, and I still think that's a cheap move. I think anybody can kick out from the freaking pedigree. But that's Triple H's finisher. You use Triple H's finisher as your own? You need to start getting one or develop something, because that was a cheap finish in my opinion. And like I already said about the New Day's finish, that finish was real cheap, especially the fact that the referee was really, he had to be either dumb or blind not to see that was not Kofi Kingston. Come on now. Really? But I'm not going into that. I'm just going to keep it moving from there. But I will say that most of the finishers in some of these matches were very cheap. And I really wished that didn't happen. But the main event match lost its momentum after that finish. It just did. It was great throughout. We even had a one-night-only Shield reunion. We had a one-night-only Shield reunion, which was great in itself. And the match has so much momentum moving on. But then the finish was so cheap. I'm like, come on, you could have had a better finish than that, and it would have been a great pay-per-view. I would have said this pay-per-view was awesome. I would have said it was sheer awesomeness in a bottle, but I can't say that because the finish was so cheap. It just was. But I will say this, guys, and this is my overall thoughts. This pay-per-view was good. It actually did kind of raise its standards a bit, because I thought it was going to be boring, but it wasn't. It was very aggressive. It was a lot faster paced than Extreme Rules. But here's the cons of it. The finishers were bad. If it just wasn't that, then it would be an awesome pay-per-view. But it's just going to be right good at this point. But guys, I want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment in the comment section below, or send a video response on your thoughts about Payback and what you would do to actually change it up, how you felt about the finish for the main event, and how you felt about all the other matches. I'm curious to hear y'all's thoughts. Well, now guys, it is late. I am going to bed, and I will see you guys later for my Raw review. It's Naturegirl 30 signing off. Peace out, y'all. Later.